So when I was shopping for X99 motherboards, I just couldn't take my eyes off the X99S Slide Plus motherboard. It came in as the cheapest motherboard here in Japan. It also came with more features than I could ever want from a motherboard. This is the quick review of the X99 Slide Plus motherboard from MSI. Let's get on with it. So as you guys may or may not know, my previous motherboard was a Z87 G45 gaming motherboard from MSI, and I had an absolutely fantastic experience on it. The onboard audio was good. It survived a lightning strike. It overclocked like a monster, especially it overclocked my 4670K Gen 1 Haswell to 5 gigs on air. I've actually got a video on that as well if you wish to see it. This, however, is a different kettle of fish. This is the X99 platform, which is the LGA 2011 socket. Now, this motherboard comes in at around $250. It features 8 DIMM slots. It also features a dual handle on the CPU. So when you're going to install the CPU, you've actually got to kind of crank it down with 2 levers, which was actually an interesting thing. The motherboard itself, it comes pretty much laid out so clearly and easy to read. Even a dummy could install a CPU in this thing, and especially the RAM as well. Looking at the features of the motherboard, I couldn't help but be impressed with every little detail on this motherboard. It features 10 SATA ports, 6 which support RAID 0 to RAID 1 to RAID 5, I believe, 2 which support IDE and AHCI mode, and another 2 for SATA Express. It also comes on board with an M2 SATA Express, which is the latest SATA from N2 if you've got one of those little drives you wish to plug into your motherboard and be drive free, sort of the big 2.5 or 3.5 inch drive base, then you can do that with this motherboard. Also, this motherboard features 2 heat sinks, and also it looks like it features a 10+5 phase power design, so it does have ample power for the CPU. And now I have been using this motherboard for a little over a few days now, and it overclocks my 5820K very comfortably at around 4.4 gigs. However, personally, I did tune it down to 4.2 gigs, just as I'm going to be using this 24/7, and I like to take care of my gear. So looking over to the rear of the motherboard, we can see that MSI have included an Intel i218 gigabit LAN. This is a really good onboard solution. It's actually one of the best and probably my personal favorite for an onboard NIC. I'm glad they included that. The audio is mediocre at best with the Realtek 892. If it was one thing I would critique about this motherboard, it would be the audio. Personally, I could notice a slight difference between the Realtek 1150 and the Realtek 892 on this motherboard compared to my Z87. So continuing on with this motherboard, it features 3 buttons on the motherboard itself. One is the overclock Genie button. If you press that, it'll pretty much lock in an automatic overclock straight away without you doing anything. I find this to be personally not my favorite way of overclocking. I love manually tweaking and getting the best possible overclock myself. However, it is good for people who are just starting with enthusiast tech, and it gives them a great, a great sort of overall understanding of how their particular CPU will run, which is actually a good thing. It also has a power button, reset button, which is great if you're using this as a test bench. And my favorite thing about this is the clear CMOS, or clear the MOS out of the C button, which is on the back of the motherboard, and it also lights up blue. And if you click it in, the light will come off. It's a very intuitive design. I love it, so you actually know when you're hitting that button and you know that everything's been reset. Kudos to MSI for that. That is like literally my favorite clear CMOS button in the world. Also, looking a little bit to the right of the motherboard, we see that they've included a dual BIOS feature with a switch as well. So you can switch between BIOSes. So if you're flashing your BIOS and you come into a bad flash, you can switch and then you can update, reflash that bad BIOS, and you're back in business. Really cool. I love that feature, especially on an entry-level X99 motherboard. So looking at the PCI Express slots, we have 4 PCI 3 16-speed slots, and we have 2 PCI 2 1-speed slots. So if you want to SLI this on this motherboard, then this motherboard will only support up to 3-way SLI. And also if you're on a 5820K, then it will support it in 16-speed, 8-speed for 2-way, or 16-speed, 8-speed, 8-speed for 3-way. If you're on a 5930K, then you will get 16-speed and 16-speed on 2-way SLI and 16-speed, 16-speed, 8-speed on 3-way SLI. So the motherboard also features 8 DDR4 quad channel slots for memory, supporting all the way up to 64 gigabytes of memory. Looking at the rear of the motherboard, we have a PS2 port, we have 2 USB 2 ports and 8 USB 3 ports, which all run off MSI's solid power delivery for Bitcoin mining technology, where it pretty much supplies a constant voltage to the USB ports. So if you're a Bitcoin miner, you don't have to worry about your ASIC miners dropping out. So I guess that's a cool feature if you're a Bitcoin miner. Looking at the audio jacks, we have 5 audio jacks and 1 extra optical out there. The audio jacks being support for manual 5.1 surround, as well as a line in and a mic in, and also a headphone out there. There's also the Intel Ethernet i218 gigabit LAN port there, and the clear CMOS button, which I've talked about before. So moving back onto the motherboard, there's also 2 USB 3 outs. There's also 2 USB 2 outs, so you can have an extra 8 USB ports on the front panel or wherever you want to put them. Looking at the CPU fan connectors, we have 2 4-pin CPU fan connectors, as well as 3 system fan connectors, which are 4-pin as well. It also features a front panel audio out and also 1 TPM connector. So let's move on now to the conclusion. I'll do a quick mic test as well. You guys can hear if there's any noise on the ADC coming into this mic, and I'll talk about a few little different things as well. So here's a quick test on the amp on the ADC and the ADC itself. This is just using my Razer Carcase headset. A lot of you guys will probably have headsets in your gaming, so this is on a volume of 50 with the plus 20 decibel feature. It does have the noise suppression as well, so if noise is a problem you can just turn that on. However, your voice quality will be affected if you use that setting, but honestly, if people can't hear, you can just turn it up to 30 decibels and then you can just put on the noise suppression. But all in all, it's not too bad. Let's move on now to a conclusion, and I'll talk about some negatives with this motherboard as well. So let's move on now to a conclusion with the X99S Slide Plus motherboard, and there's only a negative really. The only negative that I can point out with this motherboard is the first PCI Express 16 speed slot is so close to the second PCI Express 16 slot that it will make people with 2 air cooling GTX 970s, for example, have a bit of heat output there, so they're clumped up so close together. I would have liked to have seen an extra slot in between these 2 PCI Express 16 speed slots, but it's not too much of a problem, especially for people water cooling or people on a 5820K who can't get 16 speed. Anyway, you can just move the second graphics card down to the 3rd slot. However, it is a problem for someone who got a 5930K, and if they get 2 beast graphics cards in the future and they want to SLI them, then they want 16 speed PCI 3. So that's something that it is a bummer with this motherboard. I mean, ultimately people getting the X99S motherboard, I believe they will want to be putting 2 graphics cards in SLI, or most people will be. I probably will be in the future. Just not at the moment. I'm only using one 1440p monitor. But on the side note, the USB 3 slots, I would have liked to have seen them with the USB 2 front panel out ports as well. However, they are in a decent position, and I do like the intuitive design that MSI has brought with this motherboard. I mean, they've put all the SATA ports are angled where the graphics cards come over them. Also, that USB 3 port is angled as well, where the graphics card goes over it, and then the one that's not near the graphics card is angled up. So it does have a lot of options there, a lot of features, and ultimately, yeah, when I got this motherboard out of the box, I was surprised at how heavy it was. It felt really good. I mean, it felt really heavy, it felt solid, it just came feature packed. I was like, wow, okay, this is actually worth the money. So if you're looking for a motherboard that's good value for money on the X99 platform, if that could be said, good value on X99, then this is certainly it. You're getting just feature-packed motherboard. It comes with all these buttons on board the motherboard as well, like a power button, OC Genie button, reset button. You're also getting a BIOS switch button there, which is a really cool implementation, and the best clear CMOS button I've ever seen in the world. So kudos to MSI for that. This motherboard, honestly, it is pretty good bang for buck. The Realtek ALC892, it's not that bad. I mean, if you're an audiophile, you're most likely going to have audiophile grade gear anyway, so that's not even going to be a problem. For the average person like me who's not an audiophile, it really doesn't matter. And the mic in, I mean, the mic in's not bad. The line in, I'm actually recording off it now, so you guys can let me know how it sounds in the comments below. I've tested it before. I think it sounds absolutely fine. Other than that, the actual Intel i218V, the onboard NIC, is really good for gaming. So if you're a gamer, you are going to love the onboard implementation of the NIC with this motherboard. Other than that, I mean, yeah, it hasn't been too problematic. They have to update the BIOS with the B-clock strap. That is something that's a bit of a problem at the moment. As in the BIOS, I can't find anywhere to unlock the B-clock strap feature. So I believe they will update that in a future BIOS. Other than that, the motherboard is a solid overclocker. It overclocks my 5820K really well. The temps, it's at 4.2 gigs at the moment, and it's just purring along. The heat sinks aren't even getting warm. Though when I did overclock to 4.5 gigahertz at 1.32 volt or something like that, it was getting pretty hot. The heat sinks were getting pretty borderline hot. So if you're on a 5960X and you want to go with this motherboard, just be careful when you're overclocking. That's just a little caution there. Other than that, yeah, it's just an amazing board. I can highly recommend it to people who are, I guess, value-minded and they want to jump on the X99 platform. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this review. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment in the comment section below. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Tech City, where I'll be coming back to you guys with some more tech videos very shortly. Anyway, peace out for now. Bye.